The world's financial architecture is being rewritten, and most people will only notice after the new rules are already in play. If you follow the signals now, you can position yourself before this shift goes mainstream. The International Monetary Fund is mapping a next phase for cross-border money movement. On the surface, it looks technical, a standards update here, a pilot there. In reality, it's a change in how value moves between nations, banks, and platforms. The goal is simple to state and hard to build. Money should move as quickly as information, at lower cost, with better transparency, and without the friction that drains time out of every international transaction. Here's why this matters now, and why the most prepared will see it first. It's about understanding the design choices that are being tested, so you can navigate them with confidence. When new rails are built, the people who learn them early tend to create the products, the careers, and the businesses that everyone else uses later. One quiet theme that keeps showing up in IMF research and policy conversations is interoperability. Instead of one system to rule them all, the emerging model looks like a network of networks. Central bank digital currencies can coexist with regulated stablecoins, and private settlement networks can connect to public infrastructure through shared messaging and compliance standards. The emphasis on bridges, not walls. That's where Ripple becomes relevant. For years, Ripple has focused on making cross-border settlement faster and more predictable. Banks and payment providers use those rails to move value between hard-to-reach corridors in seconds instead of days. The key detail isn't hype. It's the pattern. Institutions keep experimenting with technology that allows instant settlement across different ledgers while staying inside the rules that regulators require. You don't need inside access to see the direction of travel. The research is public, the conference agendas are public, and the pilots are public. What's easy to miss is the through line that connects them. The IMF's exploration of multi-asset platforms, the spread of ISO 2022 messaging, and the rise of real-time payment systems are pieces of the same puzzle. When those pieces fit, value moves with far fewer handoffs, and the old delays start to disappear. Think of the last time you waited days for an international wire to clear. Now imagine that timeline compressed to seconds with finality you can audit. That's the user experience target. It does not require a single global currency. It requires a shared language for value and the ability to translate between networks without losing trust in the process. History leaves clues here. Every time a backbone standard takes hold, adoption looks slow until it looks sudden. Fax gave way to email. Local banking portals gave way to internet banking. The same thing will happen with cross-border settlement. The early stage is technical committees and pilots. The acceleration stage happens when the experience becomes too smooth to ignore. This is also where opportunity lives. Builders who understand messaging formats, compliance checks, and liquidity management will be valuable in every region that plugs into the new rails. Investors who track which corridors light up first will be able to separate noise from traction. Operators who align their services with systems that speak the new language will find fewer bottlenecks and more throughput. You might be asking what the practical steps look like. Start by following standards. ISO 2022 is already live in high-value payment systems and is rolling farther each quarter. Software, analytics, and services that are native to that standard will slot in more easily as new rails come online. Watch the countries and banks that actively test cross-border links between domestic real-time systems. Those are the early lanes that tend to scale. There's a second signal worth tracking. The IMF keeps stressing the need for platform models that allow many forms of money to interact. In plain English, that means the future is multi-format. A central bank digital currency in one country should be able to interact with a tokenized deposit or a regulated stablecoin somewhere else, and the rail should handle the exchange and the verification in one flow. The moment that experience becomes reliable, the advantage tilts toward anyone who can provide liquidity, analytics, or compliance tooling at the edges. Still, you should keep your eyes open. Standard shape incentives. If the standards reward speed, transparency, and compatibility, builders will design for those outcomes. If the standards reward closed gardens, users will feel it. The encouraging sign is that most public roadmaps point toward openness because that's where efficiency gains live. Interoperability isn't a slogan. It's the only way a global system avoids becoming a maze of one-way doors. Let's put this into a concrete picture. A small brand in Brazil wants to pay a designer in Poland. The invoice is denominated in local currency on each side. The payment hits a domestic real-time rail in Brazil, moves across an interoperable bridge, and lands in the Polish account with currency conversion handled automatically. The user never sees the translation layer. The cost is low, the settlement is final, and the audit trail is built into the message itself. That's the experience target many teams are chasing, from regulators to fintechs to incumbents. Bring this back to strategy. If you build products, learn the standards and design for compliance out of the box. If you run a business, map your cash flows to the first corridors that go live on the new rails. If you invest, follow pilots that graduate into production and stay skeptical of projects that never leave the lab. If you work in finance, become the person who can explain how these systems connect without jargon. That skill will compound. There's one more detail that matters. The IMF and other institutions aren't ignoring private innovation. They're studying how it can plug into public systems responsibly. Ripple is only one example of a private network that has shown how instant settlement can work in production. The bigger idea is that public standards and private rails can reinforce each other when the incentives match. That's how you get real throughput, not just marketing slides. So what should you do now? You don't need to predict every technical choice. You need to recognize a simple pattern. The pipes that move money are being rebuilt to act more like the internet. The winners will be the people who get fluent early, who align with interoperability, and who make themselves useful at the connection points where different systems meet. When the headlines finally catch up and the experience becomes obvious, the runway for early positioning will be shorter. The advantage goes to the builders, operators, and investors who move while this is still forming rather than after it hardens into habit. Momentum is building, not to trap you, but to remove needless friction for legitimate activity. That creates room for new businesses, faster cash flow, and simpler global reach. The advantage goes to those who prepare while the blueprint is still being drawn. Here is the bottom line. The rails for cross-border value are shifting towards speed, transparency, and compatibility. You don't need to guess every detail to benefit. Learn the language of the new system, align early where interoperability is real, and keep your focus on corridors that move from pilot to production. That's how you turn a quiet policy shift into an edge most people will never see coming. If this helped you see the signals more clearly, subscribe to Wealth Signals so you never miss the next strategic update.